Hello, welcome to Marathon Swim Stories, where we connect with curious and courageous individuals from all walks of life to explore our relationship with water, what holds people back, and why others keep going, where we investigate the connection that we have with each other, those who support us, and the water that is 70% of our planet. If you've ever stood at the edge of a body of water and wondered, you're in good company. I'm Shannon Keegan, mom, wife, marathon swimmer, swim efficiency coach, and founder of Intrepid Water, where I teach swim freedom, virtually, locally, and abroad. The freedom to get started, break out of your comfort zone, or shatter your preconceived notions of what's possible. Find out more at intrepidwater.com. Hello, listeners. I love spring in the Rogue Valley. Snow still caps the mountains, while down in the valley floor, we alternate between beautiful 70-degree days and cool, rainy ones. The additional sunlight each day reminds us warm, dry weather is coming soon. Would you consider a visit? I've been working with swimmers to design personalized swim camps to set you on the path of achieving your swimming goals by reducing your chance of injury and igniting your curiosity for how to efficiently move your body through the water. Mini camps include one-on-one coaching in the endless pool with video analysis, personalized practices that help you reinforce and retain joint-safe movement patterns, and any number of follow-up Zoom calls to address your questions and tune your training plan. Reach out to me, Shannon at intrepidwater.com, to design and book your personalized swim camp. I'm ecstatic to share Gina Harden's swim story with you today. From breaking barriers as one of the first female Navy divers to conquering the English Channel in her 60s, Gina's journey is a testament to resilience, grit, and the power of chasing big dreams. Tune in to hear how she continues to defy limits in and out of the water. I hope you enjoy Gina's story. I'm here with Gina Harden today. I had the good fortune of meeting Gina in person last year in Boston, and I'm so excited for her to tell us our story today. Gina, what's your story?
Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Well, I think my love of the ocean was probably instilled in me by my parents in my childhood. My father was in the Navy. I was a Navy brat. And so family vacations, we didn't have a lot of money, were spent at the ocean all over the world. So we go camping in Trafalgar in Spain. And then we lived in Key West on the water, had a boat. So every afternoon after school, go out swimming and skiing. So we moved about every 3 years to different places. And before we would, my parents would accept an assignment, my mom and dad would always check out the swim team. So they had to meet the standard in order to be the next place where we were going to live. So I learned to swim at a pretty early age. My mom was a competitive swimmer. So I was on AAU swim teams from around 10 years of age to high school. I stopped swimming competitively when Title IX hit. I was a junior in high school because I wanted to play other sports. So I ended up playing volleyball, tennis, and basketball. And I got scholarship offers in all three after 2 years. So I ended up playing basketball at Florida State, but I continued lifeguarding at Disney World for years and also started competing in triathlons. And of course, swimming was my favorite part of the triathlon because I always felt like I had an advantage until the run. After college, I ended up working as an aquatic director at the YMCA in Everett, Washington. And one day my dad came home and said, hey, the Navy's opening up the diving program to women. And a lot of programs were opening up into women in the early 80s. So as a swimmer, I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome. A chance to work around the ocean, be in the water. It sounded like a great career path for me. It was a very arduous and demanding training pipeline. And the Navy was still diving the Mark V helmet, which is the big copper brass 200-pound helmet. So a lot of women weren't, able to get out of the water or move around in the water in this huge rig. So I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. That was a time, the early 90s weren't generally a friendly environment for women, in male dominated career paths. But, I've always been able to kind of rely on my faith for strength. So that's what helped me persevere through these long swims as well. So I spent about 35 years in the Navy and then retired in 2017.
That's amazing. So you spent a lot of time around the water. And I guess I always associated you with Florida. So when you said Everett, Washington, I was like, what was that like? So how long were you in Washington for?
I was there about 2.5 years. I lived in San Francisco. I lived in Miami. We lived in Spain. We lived in London. So I've lived all over the world. Yeah. But my father is from Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and my mom is from London. So that's kind of the English Channel connection. Yeah.
We got it. So when did you start? So you did triathlon and then you ended up. So I'm tempted to jump down this Navy path because I know there's some really cool Navy stories, but I also want to hear when the long swimming started. So take me through some of the rough parts of, I mean, like you said, the 90s and being a woman in a male dominated industry.
I would come out onto the tarmac in the morning because we'd have physical training in the mornings, and there would be like 200 guys out in formation, and I would be the single woman walking out in front of the guys. And you had your cat calls and everything. And I'd get to my class, and my team leader would say, Ensign Harden, lead the exercises and turn around, face away, so we have a good view.
Oh, geez. Oh, my gosh.
Do 8 count bodybuilders because you're a woman, flutter kicks because you're a woman and your partner can't get rid of you. You got to take it in stride because, it was times were a changing.
But you didn't know that at the time. I mean, it was a paving the way.
But, I had my classmates. So we got really close with my classmates, and they started to kind of protect me and make sure that I was given fair opportunity. And, it all ends up being about the people around you, just like in this community of marathon swimmers. It's really about the people.
Tell us at least one or two or three good stories about some of the cool places that it took you diving for the Navy and being one of the first women, but some of the cool things that you got to go do with that.
So I went to Bahrain in the Middle East, and I was the Force Protection and Harbor Security Officer there for the Fifth Fleet, which is all the countries around the Persian Gulf, basically. And they decided to bring marine mammals. The Navy had a classified program at that time of 5 dolphins and a couple sea lions. And so there was some intel out that the enemy may be swimming up under ships and under scuba under the ports and try and blow up stuff. So decided to bring the marine mammals out there. And so I was in charge of bringing them out, getting them out there and establishing their habitat, and then working with the trainers and, all the folks that travel with them to facilitate their use out there. So I got to do that. We built them an air-conditioned enclosure. They had the best fish. Our dolphins were twice as big as the regular ones swimming around in the ocean. So we did something called dolphin calibration. So the dolphins come and look for swimmers swimming underneath the harbors and the ships, and they ram them with a cone on their nose that has a charge in it. Well, we calibrate them by practicing that. So we would go swim off, and then the dolphins would try to come find us. And then, of course, the charge wasn't in the nose, but they'd still ram you. So you hold your mask and hold your elbows into your side. So when they rammed you, you rolled about 10 feet. So that was our dolphin calibration. That was Bahrain. Interesting times.
Yeah. How did you end up in charge of the program?
Because I was a diver and it was a diving job, and I applied for the job. So they brought me out there. Yeah.
Did you bond with the dolphins?
No, not really. I mean, I got to swim with them, but they're a little intimidating because they're huge. I mean, they're bigger than wild dolphins, because they're so well fed and taken care of. So I got to swim with them a little bit just in the tanks and, ride around on them. But we did have one dolphin named Jake who kept going up to Kuwait because I think there was a fisherman feeding him really good fish up there. But we had to keep going up there to get him. But that was fun.
Oh, man, that's so cool. Okay, so take us to when the part of your story where you start thinking it's a good idea to swim further than it is in a triathlon. So you like the swimming part, but when did you start getting into marathon swimming?
Well, they say that a dream unfulfilled is like a hole in your soul. So when I was a child, we lived in Spain, and my mom and dad, we would drive to London almost every holiday to see my grandparents, and we would travel across on the ferry on the English Channel. And I remember my father telling me, people swim this because we were all on the swim team and we had to have the red, white, and blue Mark Spitz bathing suits and everything at that time. And I said, well, I'm going to swim the English Channel. So I was probably 10, 11 years old. So I think when I was in high school, I wrote the Channel Swimming Federation for an application packet, which I still have. And I did a book report on Gertrude Earl when I was like in the third grade. So I always had this yearning to do it. It was a dream that I had. And so my whole life I said I was going to do it. And then when I turned 50, I said, it's too late. It's not going to happen. Well, then I retired from the Navy and I was like 58. And I said, well, I have all this free time. When I'm 60, I'm going to do it. So I set my money in and got a slot and then started to train for it. That's kind of what started me. It was a lifelong dream for me, a childhood dream.
Yeah.
I was supposed to swim it in 2020, but then COVID hit. So I was packed and my pilot was Lance Orem, and I was supposed to get on the plane that week. And Lance wrote and said, it's not going to happen. So it was very disappointing, all the 2 years of training and hype. And I'm like, okay, well, this just gives me more time. And in retrospect, it was a good thing because it was all the more preparation and need to go to camps and meet people and talk to people and really learn about, because you don't know. I mean, it's amazing what you learn from other swimmers, the tricks of the trade. So I ended up swimming it in 2021. I had to quarantine for 14 days before my swim, and I kept sneaking out in Dover Harbor in the early mornings to get my swims in. Don't tell the health society that. But so I went out with Lance, and yeah, it was just incredible.
You can't just leave it. It was incredible.
Well, I had the most beautiful day. It was the most beautiful day. And people tell me it was the prettiest day of that whole summer. I think it ended up being just a gorgeous day. Deb Vine and Melanie Tyrrell were my crew, and they were just wonderful. The water was gorgeous. The sun was shining. The thing for me in all my preparation was about enjoying every moment of the journey to get there, and not just the swim. The 2 years before, all through the COVID, and then I didn't one time during my swim feel like, oh, this is awful, because I was just so excited about the opportunity to realize this dream of mine. And it was a long French inshore. The swim went by so fast, but when I got to the French inshore, it just seemed like it was 3 times as long as the other part of the swim, because I saw the cap to my right, and then I saw it go away. And I just started swimming parallel to the shore, as it happens. And I think I swam where I could see the bottom for a long time too, because it was just, the tide was in and it was too deep to stand. And it was funny when I finally got to shore, Lance had driven the Zodiac in, and I'm like, oh, good. You brought the Zodiac in. I get a ride back. He goes, no, you're swimming back. And I didn't think I could, but I just felt so elated that I was able to do that. But it was just a fantastic feeling. And I was so grateful to everyone. Everybody says that it's a solo swim, but it's never by yourself. I mean, it's the crew, the pilot, it's just the whole community that supports you. And it was everything I thought it would be, just fantastic.
How do you think of yourself? Because I think of myself as pretty introverted and pretty like keep to myself kind of person. But it's even actually, I'd say it's even hard for me to ask for help. But it's such like that community, like the bonding, like to really realize what's possible, that you could swim across an entire channel between 2 land masses, but you couldn't do it without people. Like it's so reaffirming of our need for others. But talk to me a little bit about, so that's me. What about you?
Well, I'm the same way. I'm kind of an introverted extrovert. I've had to become kind of extroverted. I think most swimmers are kind of like that, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we like the connection, but we also like the quiet of the water, I think.
Lots and lots of quiet time. Yeah, I've always been for all my swims, I've done a lot of training camps. And because when I first started training for the English Channel, Tracy Clark's camp, I did that a couple of times. I did the South Africa trip with Tracy and Roger. I've done SCAR like 3 times because you like suck up all this positive energy, and not only the information, but it's the energy that you gather from these people that do these incredible things. And I know you've talked about imposter syndrome. I mean, I think we all feel that when you're surrounded by these people that are your heroes and you just respect so much because you kind of know what it takes to do something like this. So I think gathering the information and then gathering that energy just edifies you. And it really, I think when I swam, it was Catalina. When I swam Catalina, I thought about Jody Jones. No Jody, we lost Jody. And I thought about some of the people had overcome challenges to do that. And, I'm this healthy person, and there's no reason why I can't put one arm in front of another for however long it takes. So, yeah, so you draw that from people that you admire and edify you.
So you finished this lifelong goal. It's so fulfilling. It was an amazing day. Why didn't you just tie it up in a bow? I'm done. I did it.
That's what I thought I was going to do, And then I heard about the Triple Crown. I said, oh, well, that sounds fun. And because I had enjoyed the journey so much and all the people, and I wanted to continue to maintain these relationships and continue the training because I get so much from it, physically and emotionally. I mean, definitely tell a difference on a day when I don't swim in my mental outlook. So I said, well, I can do this. 20 bridges sounds like a fun swim. And I decided to do that. And I kind of recruited Melanie Turrell to do a tandem with me because it was a little cheaper that way. And I thought it would be fun to have a friend close by. So we went and did 20 bridges, and it was amazing. Crazy swim, just to swim around the island of Manhattan. And when you tell people that, they're like, what? It doesn't quite register what you do. It was an eventful swim.
Tell us more. You can't leave it at that.
Coming around the first corner where all the ferries come in there, I noticed that I was swimming straight up and down. And so I got caught in a whirlpool there. So it wasn't like I being sucked under, but I just noticed that I was like swimming straight up and down. So I did that. And then I came around, and we only had one kayaker between us. So I was Alex, and he was up with Mel. Mel was a little bit in front of me, and I was swimming, and all of a sudden I rammed into this wooden piling, and I had to like pull myself around because the current was so strong. And as I did that, I ended up getting a cramp in my calf. So I'm like paddling, but I'm trying to put my back downstream so that the current's moving me, and I'm hollering, hot shot, I need hot shot. But yeah, it was a fun swim. And then coming up the Hudson, the waves, it was like 4 to 5 foot waves. And it was such a fun swim, just coming up. And I couldn't even see Mel or Alex until I was at the crest. And then I came back down, and you're just riding the alley oop up. And we did it. And I think it was just under 9 hours, but it was an amazing swim. I just had so much fun. The pressure was off. After English Channel, I'm like, okay, this isn't so far. I can do this. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Did you feel in the moment when you were there doing it, were you still feeling that it was fun when you're caught in a whirlpool or running into a pill?
Well, in the beginning, I didn't enjoy it so much. I'm like, oh, it takes a little while to, how it is. It takes a while to get into that state of mind and that rhythm. But when I'm coming up the Hudson, I was having a blast. It was so fun. And then, swimming along through Harlem where it's real shallow when you're trying not to think about what's in the water and the water's kind of brown. It's kind of fun to swim along the wall, especially with Mel right there, having a friend to look at and kind of thumbs up. And yeah, you know how it is. You go through periods in a swim, the peaks and valleys, and do your self-talk or whatever gets you through the day to get back in that place where you just feel like it's timeless.
There was somebody, a couple of things are coming to me. One is one of the interviews I did with somebody who did SCAR last year. She was talking about how you said timeless. It made me think she talked about water as being ageless. Do you feel like like when you're in the water that you could be a child playing or, your elderly self. Like
Well, starting to become more real.
But it's just kind of neat how the water is so like playful. Like, like it just makes us feel, ageless. I like that. I like how she phrased that. But how did you meet Mel and Deborah? I mean, I guess I've at least interviewed Melanie and talked to her quite a bit, but how did you meet them?
Initially met Mel at Tracy Clark's swim camp in England, and then we both did the South Africa trip, and we were at the dinner, the last night dinner, and I'm sitting next to Mel, and I'm like, I don't have any crew. And then she's like, well, I'll crew for you. And I'm like, oh, great. And then at that same camp, Deborah came one day for a luncheon, and I met Deborah then. And so Deborah, since she also crewed English Channel for me, Deborah and Mel, they put on chef's hat when they're feeding you. And before we got to France, they had all this bunting and they had berets on, like we're getting close to France. And they just made it fun. And Deborah ended up doing my latest North Channel attempt with me too, crewing for that. So yeah, and it's just a great group of people.
So what happened after Manhattan, after the adventures in Manhattan?
Well, the next logical step was Catalina. So I signed up for Catalina and I was excited. Everybody talks about, oh, it's beautiful. The bioluminescence easier than the English Channel. And that was not my experience. It was beautiful. You start around 11 p.m. and they're shooting stars across the sky. And I had a beautiful night, so I can't blame it on the weather. But I had a beautiful night. The water was clear. I felt good. I had two kayakers. I had my feeds down and I got in and started swimming and no thought about creatures or anything. I just really enjoyed it. You got those little jellyfish that sting you, but they're just little zaps. So that wasn't too bad. And I'm swimming and I look to my left, my kayaker's on my right, and there's this big gray thing. And I'm thinking, is that a shark? And so I said to my kayaker, what is that? And she said, I can't see it. And so I'm looking and it was a baby whale, a gray whale. And so they got a picture of him swimming away from me, but she swam with me for about 10 minutes. So that was pretty cool. And I had that same thing in South Africa with dolphins swimming next to you. Just really makes you appreciate the environment you're in. And then time started going on, and then I just felt like I wasn't getting any closer because you can see the cliffs for a long way, and they tell you not to look. But how do you not look? How do you not look? I mean, you take a feed and you turn, and there it is. So the cliffs were there forever, and I just felt like, and then night turned to day, and then day turned to night, and then it just. And I said to my kayaker, "Am I getting any closer?" And she's like, well, you're stuck in a current. So I think I was stuck in a current for 3 or 4 hours. And they tried to bring the boat to block the current, but I don't bilateral breathe. So he was on my right side or on my left side, and I breathe on my right. And so I'm swimming to the boat. So that didn't work. But a long story short, it took me 23 and a half hours or 22 and a half hours. And I'm like, why didn't I just go for 24? Then I could be in the 24-hour club. But I don't think I could have made it. No, I couldn't see anything. And they're like, head to the light because the boat was shining a light on the landing. And I'm trying to see the light. And I think my eyes were really crusted over. I don't know what it was. But so I'm pulling weeds. They have the seagrass. So I'm pulling the seagrass because I'm so shallow, but I can't stand up. But I'm pulling the grass to get to the shore. And I finally got to the shore and Connie Blue was one of my crew, and she swam in with me. And I think I just fell into her arms, and they towed me back to the boat. I got on the boat, and I couldn't stand, and they're laying on top of me. And someone would try to get up, and I'm like, no, 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 don't get up, go get up, because I was so cold. I was doing this breathing thing, it was weird. So I think I was on the verge of hypothermia there. I was still shivering, but yeah, it took me a long time to get back. And I really never thought about quitting because I kept saying triple crown, triple crown, triple crown. But I ended up getting this pain in my side, my left side. And after the night that swim, I had this really strong pain. And I thought I had pulled an intercostal muscle. And then it after the swim, it just progressively got worse. And I thought, well, I better go get an x-ray. One night it was so bad, I'm like, I'm going to get an x-ray, maybe I have a fracture. And the doctor comes out and says, well, the good news is you don't have a rib fracture, but you have a tumor on your pancreas. And I'm like, oh. So Catalina saved my life. It was a tough swim, but it pretty much saved my life because of the tumor. And I ended up having surgery. They cut out half my pancreas, took out my spleen. So after Catalina, that kind of put me, in bed for a little while. So my swimming stopped for a little while after that. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, Catalina, people say, oh, Catalina's the best. I'm like, it is not easier than the English Channel. But anyway, that was Catalina.
So you say it saved your life because you ended up feeling this pain and going to a doctor.
Right, because it was pancreatic cancer. So I had the surgery after that. And then I'm recovering, and God love them. My friend Mel and Nikki Pope and Anel called me and said, hey, Nikki's got a slot. And I'm laying in bed recovering from my surgery, thinking, oh, God, life's over. I'm going to die. And they're like, hey, we got a slot for Gibraltar. We want to do, a foursome. It ended up being three of us, but we want to do it. And I'm like, yes, and it was just what I needed. Little angels came to me and gave me hope. And so, that's how I ended up getting into Gibraltar.
Did you have to do chemo or anything after?
No, I didn't. She got it all. I have scans. I have PET scans, and she checks it, and touch wood, everything's good. I'm healthy. I don't have any repercussions from it. It was all in the tail of the pancreas, so she just chopped it in half, and the spleen was in the way, so she had to take that. So I have to be careful with dirty water. I can't swim anywhere where there's because my immune system might be compromised. But yeah, I feel good, and Catalina again saved my life.
You said you never thought about quitting. How did you get through that 3-4 hours of staying kind of in place?
I was tired, and it's really strange because it was the only time I was really conscious of myself getting lower and lower in the water and actually having to force myself to breathe. When I admire you doing these long 50-mile swims and Sarah, and I can't imagine swimming that long. I just knew I could see how someone would drown silently because I felt, in retrospect, I was just getting lower and I had to force myself to exhale. I just don't ever remember wanting to quit. I remember wanting to be there badly. And I don't remember hours. I mean, I'm sure you swim and you don't remember where the time goes sometimes. And I just got into a rhythm. And I did start stopping a lot and talking to my kayaker. And she says, you're out of the current. You have to go. You have to keep swimming. So I did. I listened to my kayaker, and I did it. But yeah, it was a long haul. And but I'm glad I finished it. And my pilot and my crew, I mean, my pilot, Kevin from Bottom Scratcher, I don't know how he didn't pull me. I'm just so grateful that he didn't. Whenever I got the water, I told my crew, I said, do not let me get out unless it's medically necessary. And I think they were like talking me up to Kevin on the boat. So yeah, they just hung with me, and I'm so grateful because yeah, they could have easily pulled me. I'm sure they were like, oh, was she ever going to get there? But just really, really nice of them to let me finish.
Do you think some of that perseverance came from your Navy training and
Absolutely. Yeah. I think from swimming from an early age, swim practice, just laps and laps and laps, follow the line, and then, the Navy is very physically demanding. And it's the physical training that you have to do to maintain the standard to be able to function in the ocean in these rigs and do the work that you need to do. And yeah, I think so. I think I've just always been the kind of person that needs a challenge. I need some kind of goal, and it's not necessarily about the goal. It's about the process to get there, the time, the discipline that's required. And I like it when I'm regimented in my training and I feel good, and it just feels like I'm doing something worthwhile, I guess. A purpose for just being plain stubborn.
so in your recovery, you get the slot for Gibraltar. And so how long after was that?
It was, see, I had surgery in May, and then I think it was the next April. So I had about a year where I was recovering and just gentle swimming and getting back into it. And Gibraltar was such a blessing to me and the girls. I mean, we were there 2 weeks and we're waiting for the wind to change. And the last day of our window, we got in.
I feel like that's always the story with Gibraltar. It's like the day you're going to leave.
Yeah. I mean, but we didn't suffer. I mean, we ate good. We swam every day in the ocean and we just enjoyed each other's company, talking about the swim and the organization. I can't remember the name of it, but they're just so supportive and they're like, we're going to get in, we're going to get in. And then the swim, when you think of it in relation to these other swim, it's just across the lane, right? It's not that far, but the current, the current. So we made it and we stayed together. That was the cool thing is we swam as a team, even though we're, pretty different ability levels, but we were together and we finished together. Yeah. And that was the victory, celebrating in each other's accomplishment. And it was a great comeback swim, for me to think, hey, I still got it. And they brought champagne on the boat and that was kind of cool and a good group of gals.
So then, of course, now you've done Gibraltar. So we must decide what's next.
So then I'm like, well, I had always been kind of toying and I never said it out loud, Ocean Seven, you know, and I said, well, I'll try and do the hardest one and see if I can do it. Everyone says the North Channel is the hardest. So I'm like, I'll try and do that one. And if I can do that one, then I'll say it out loud. The medical stuff kind of brought this thinking of vulnerability to my mind, which I never ever occurred to me, that I could be vulnerable. And so I did a lot of the Infinity has a gal who she's like a therapist. And so I talked to her a lot about this fear that I started to have. And it was very helpful. And then, I did some hypnosis too about it because it was just thinking that, hey, that's never going to happen to me. All of a sudden I'm like, okay, I've got to get rid of this limitation. And that's what it was, a limitation in my thinking. And I've got to get rid of it. So I trained from the North Channel. Again, I went to Dunnigadee and swam with the Chunky Dunkers, who are just wonderful, and had a great time. And I got out there and I wasn't in the right headspace. I don't think I was ready. I lost my dog, like months before, and my lab Cooper. So I wasn't there. So I got in, I swam, and I had done a lot of cold water training because, I live in Florida. So, I did SCAR, I did hit the wall, I did cork distance week, try to get in cold water. I had bought a chiller for my bathtub. So I felt like I was ready, but I got in, I swam for a couple hours and I started to get, and I think it wasn't because my jaw was tightening up. It was because of my thinking that my jaw started to tighten up. And it happened. It wasn't physical because I didn't think I was cold, but then I started thinking, I don't want to do this. And then I started, and I told Deb on the boat, I'm like, Deb, I don't want to do this. And she goes, oh, swim a little bit longer. You know how they do. And I'm like, I stopped 2 or 3 times. And finally, I think just under 3 hours, I said, I don't want to do it. I'm okay with it. And I touched the boat. For me, I never have ever given up. I don't think of it that way. I think I do think of it in that way, in that I just said that, but I think it was more, I wasn't prepared to continue. I could have continued, but I wasn't prepared to do what you had to do to get there. So I haven't told anybody, but I just told you in the email that I'm going to try again. I've got a slot in 26. So, yeah, so I'm just starting and I'm hoping I will be in a better space. So that's where I am right now.
It's interesting. I've heard other people talk about kind of that. It's interesting that you mentioned that you lost your dog right before, because it's an interesting thing that to figure out how to give ourselves the space for that and still strive for what our goals that we want, right?
I knew that would be hard to lose your dog, but I didn't realize. I mean, I live alone. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. And, Cooper was my guy. We went everywhere. And I didn't realize how impactful the grief would be. So it was tough, but I think that was combined with the vulnerability. I don't know. I don't know why it happened, but I do. The only thing I can say about it is my head wasn't ready to do the North Channel. So we're going to work on that again and get there.
Yeah. Is there anything you're targeting so that you are ready next time?
Well, I'm doing swim around Key West, which won't help with the cold water, but I'm starting to work on my training plan. I do have Cork Distance Week I'm going to do, but I am going to look for some cold water swims next year to get ready. And I think I may go spend a little more time in Donegal before and do some longer swims there. I mean, I was swimming every day around the Minions, the yellow buoys they have there, but I wasn't putting in the time that I needed to prior to the swim in that area. So that's what I'm going to do.
Is it time that we need to, or is it, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of ways that we can prepare ourselves. It doesn't always have to be laps and laps and laps. It can be, but I think it could also just be, I don't know, one of my swimmers talks about just like laying in the snow, or you don't have the ability to lay in the snow, but even like the having the chiller in your bathtub. But really, like I tried when I was getting ready for Loch Ness, like really just like understanding what's happening in my body when I'm getting cold and I can't move, like in a chiller in a bathtub, versus when you're able to move. And like how can I channel the ability to move energy into the, like when swim mastery, we talk about the engine of our body driving us forward, and like that's constantly generating energy, and like that's like leaning into that source of energy that's within you that you're taking. Obviously, it goes with you the whole way.
That's good, Shannon. I like that a lot. Leaning into that energy, generating it within your body.
Yeah, and no, but it's important physiologically to understand how the cold impacts you, which is why we do the cold plunges and or the chillers in the bathtub or whatever. Like it's important to know how it feels, but it's important to feel that feeling and know that you can overcome what's coming. When I used before Loch Ness, I would try to raise the water temperature because they actually had a thermometer in the cold plunge I was doing, and so you could see what it was when you got in, and then you could see what. Not that I could change how much it was going up, but it was just a really interesting thing, like even psychologically, right, for me to be like, oh yeah, I raised the water temperature, but it was. Yeah, like I said, I think there's a bit the psychological piece is huge. Like obviously there's a big physiological piece and there's this vulnerability and then like reconciling all of that. But it's such an admirable thing to go back and tackle that, Gina. I'm really excited for you.
It's like I asked Liz Fry at Cork last year for any advice, and she said, it's just a swim.
Yeah. The more bigger deal you make of it, the bigger a deal it will be, right?
That's right. So I thought that was good. It's just another swim. So it's just prepare, and that's my plan mentally and physically to prepare myself. And I think be comfortable with being uncomfortable and use all the techniques like you just suggested there to get across. So, and if I don't, that's okay too. But my plan is to get across.
Yeah, it's interesting that I'm thinking about the, like the driving factor of the Triple Crown and the Ocean Seven. Like it's interesting how it plants these little seeds for us. And I guess that's that purpose that we need to keep swimming.
Yeah. And for now, I'm just taking them one at a time. I'm getting older and it's hard to get past Pat Gallant. I mean, she's the hero, the mentor. I mean, I'm never going to get older than her. So, if I can keep going in her steps, I'll be happy.
Tell us about your puppy.
Well, her name is Lily Bell. She's a yellow lab, but she's more red than yellow. She's 6 months old and she's a pistol. She's very independent. And my dog Cooper, he could have been a service dog. He was very calm. And she can be calm, but she struts around. She's in charge and she's just been a joy, especially now that she's potty trained. But yeah, she's been fun.
Does she swim with you?
She has been getting in the pool with me. She doesn't like to get in unless her ball's in. So I have a little swim out, but she gets in there and romps around, in about a foot of water. But she's learning. I had a little life vest on her and I taught her how to swim, but she taught herself really. But she's a joy for sure.
Thank you so much, Gina. Any other parting wisdom that you want to share with? I feel like we just tapped the surface. You've got some good stuff.
I was going to say, I know you always ask that. And I wanted to say that so many times people tell you, pull from that inner strength, pull in deep when times are rough. But I would submit that look without, look at your crew who are there supporting you. Look at this beautiful water that you're swimming in, that is just these creatures in the water. And then look upward or wherever you look, to whatever place you look, to be grateful for the opportunity and the health to be able to do this. So that would be my little tidbit.
Oh my gosh, you're giving me goosebumps. Yes, it's surrender and presence, which you captured really beautifully.
And that's it about swimming, isn't it? You have to be present or else you drown. Every minute you can't be thinking about anything too deep because you've got to stroke and you've got to breathe and you've got to propel